So if you've been following my previous post about my fleet update or my fleet introduction, I pointed out this issue. Looks like an upper control arm here on this 86 Saab. I won't know the full gory details until I take the wheel off, so I'm going to jack it up and then I'm going to get underneath and see how it looks. We'll go from there. So upon further inspection with the wheel off, if you look down in here, you can see that whole one side of the control arm is bent, it's broken off actually. It's right there, right where it hits up against the inner fender. Should be up in there, but instead it's there. Other side is still intact. Trying to get the camera in to see it is a little bit tricky. Got a bump stop that fell out either, too. So it's kind of a problem, but hopefully that's easily fixable. So that new, I'm gonna need a remanufactured, or not remanufactured, but new used, because they don't make these upper control arms anymore. Probably gonna get a lower one too, and see what we can do with that. I'll have to call around. There's a local Saab specialty shop around here that sometimes has spare parts, otherwise it's to the internets to see. So further updates coming on this job. I'm probably gonna have to do some significant disassembly in order to get at the bolts that hold this upper control arm in. So if you see the spring too, it's nice and crooked. So anyway, more work to be done here. Stay tuned. Okay, so after doing some research, looks like we're going to be in for a major disassembly project here on this car. Down below the coolant tank there, where I'm shining that beam of light, is the control arm. You can just see right about there where the bolt attaching point goes into sort of like a, what do you call it, rod of some sort. See, it's very close to the engine, not much room, bunch of stuff in the way. The manual says you have to pull the engine, but I've read on some of the forums that people have been able to get those out without pulling the engine. I'm going to see what I'm going to have to do here. It's definitely going to be a pretty difficult process. At the very least, this intake trumpety thing, coolant reservoir, probably the alternator, oil filter, potentially this whole intake manifold are going to have to go out. Probably going to have to move that AC compressor out of the way too, so it's going to be a major disassembly job just to get at it. I'll just keep you updated on what happens and if I'm at all successful or whether we're going to have to pull the engine. In that case, it's going to be a long time before this gets fixed, but see how it goes. Stay tuned for further updates. So pulling the coolant reservoir, just one hose here, and then there's a couple bolts that sit down there that have to come out. And a little overflow hose here, a little bit of rust. Looks kind of icky, but mainly structural, not structural. Some surface rust. A lot of paint that's peeled off, so I'll have to deal with that when we put everything back together. Alternator is hidden. There's a bolt here, that's the adjuster, and another one back down, buried in there. That's gonna be fun to get to. Not. Let's see if I can take that off, and then to deal with the AC compressor hoses and some other stuff. A little bit more access. So a bit of a change of plan. I was going to try to pull the alternator, but I have to deal with this thing, which is the brake caliper. The way the spring is configured, because of the way the control arm is broken, I'm having a hard time getting my compressor, what do you call it, plates, grabbers. I can't really get the whole thing in there as easily as I would like. So I'm going to see if I can pull this caliper off. May have to take some other things off. This thing is wicked rusty and also confusing because on these cars they actually run the parking brake which is this cable here that actually goes in and applies the brakes independently of the hydraulic piston. It's another weird thing that Saab did, so this is going to take a little bit of research to get this thing off. I'm going to see if I can pull that off and then see if I can get the compressor in on those springs. And this might take a while. So this did take a while, and several hours later, caliper is still attached. As you can probably tell, it's not a good thing. Because everything being rusty means that this thing is pretty much frozen on. Don't have a torch here. I could try to blast it with propane, but don't have one handy. What I am going to try to do is get the shock absorber off, and I can compress the spring somewhat. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to take the load off of this control arm and just cut it out because it's already broken anyway. May not be the most ideal way to do it, but I'm going to give it a shot. See how it goes. So this is what a shock absorber bushing looks like after you've had to destroy it to get it off. Originally it would fit into the hoop here. That's kind of tough to see. But I was getting stuck, and there's a little metal collar that sits right about there. I think that might be a little bit corroded on, hopefully not too bad. But the shock absorber is off. I'm having to cut the shaft here. I'll have to push the rest of it up through the bottom of the fender, as that nut was so corroded that the shaft just spins around, and no matter what you do, you try to grab it. Still wasn't able to get it loose. So next thing I want to do is see if I can hook up the spring compressor, get this load at least off of this control arm, and I'm going to cut right in here, see if I can get the spring out. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a spring. Just cutting that shock was actually enough to get enough clearance for this thing to get in and actually work. So that was good. This being the spring compressor anyway, it's got the tool plate design. There's the details of the destruction. I'm going to have to remove this part, which is the perch. Because I don't think that came with a part that I had ordered online. That Saab's shop did not end up having the part I was looking for. So the next challenge is going to be figuring out how to get this thing out and get the new one in. So I'm hoping I don't have to pull the engine completely, but I might be able to jack a little bit to get down in there and maybe rotate the whole engine towards the other side of the car. That will be in further updates. But for now, at least we got this out. And can better see underneath in there with what we're working with. So stay tuned for further updates.